The Seahawks have a big game coming up on Monday Night Football, but the trade deadline is zeroing in. Which targets might John Schneider be looking at, and how much is it going to cost to bring in some reinforcements for the roster? We're going to have 6 proposals coming your way here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Blue Friday by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, even during the midst of the ALCS. We greatly appreciate all of you, whether you're tuning in from Shelton, Washington, or near my neck of the woods in Waterloo, Indiana. We appreciate all of our everydayers. The Seahawks getting ready for a big Monday night game against the Texans. We're going to have our weekly keys to victory, what Seattle's got to do on offense and defense to move to 5-2 on the season. Picks to click, game predictions, and some fun trade deadline proposals that are proposed by you, our listeners, and we're going to be diving into that in a jam-packed episode. Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. John Schneider over the years has been as aggressive as any general manager in the NFL when it comes to adding talent at the trade deadline. Last year it was Ernest Jones. The year before, Leonard Williams. In the past, Carlos Dunlap, Quandre Diggs, Dwayne Brown. The vast majority of the deals that John Schneider has made this time of year have ended up being absolute steals. Ernest Jones just being the latest example of that. And a lot of these guys have been rentals that ended up being signed to new contracts and staying in Seattle long-term. So this is always a fascinating time of year, Nick. And you and I decided, you know what? Let's see who the fans want the Seahawks to trade for. Now, one name that was offered up a lot that you and I are not going to be talking today because we've beaten a dead horse on Trey Hendrickson, and Cincinnati beating Pittsburgh last night. They're 3-4. They're very much in that race in the AFC North, and they still believe they can be in contention when Joe Burrow comes back in December. So it seems less and less likely they're going to be even willing to listen on a trade for Trey Hendrickson. So we're not going to go down that pipe, but we've got 6 names at random here that I'm going to be dishing out. And Nick, you get the first honors of coming up with a trade proposal. And let's go down to New Orleans, a player that Clint Kubiak is really familiar with. Chris Olave, a former first-round pick receiver at Ohio State. Seattle's already got one of those, but why not put them both together? Let's talk trade proposals here.
Well, first of all, that would just be a really fun connection with, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ohio State, and then Clint Kubiak. The connections are just already there. Shout out also, he's a Mission Hills High School San Diego guy. So he comes, I'm very familiar with Olave and his, I've watched his career with great interest. And obviously he's had some really nice seasons in New Orleans. And honestly, I looked at his stats. It felt like he's had like 6 1,000-yard seasons. I don't know why, but he's only had 2. I know with injuries and poor quarterback play, in New Orleans have kind of bogged it down a little bit, but getting him out of New Orleans and into a system he's very familiar with a quarterback who's on a heater and a teammate that he shared an Ohio State uniform with, that would be really, really fun. And no offense to Cooper Kupp, but if you slide in Chris Olave next to JSN and then Cooper Kupp is all of a sudden your 3rd best receiver, or maybe him and Olave are 2A, 2B. I mean, oh my gosh, that is an absolute nightmare. So as far as like trade proposals, I really struggle with trade proposals. I'm going to be hand up. Sometimes I just throw it out there and everyone's like, you're an idiot, or, oh, that's way too rich, you can't send that there, or, oh yeah, that'd be a steal. For me, trying to find it, I know the picked up fifth year option, I believe, which is I think at $15.5 million is what I understand for next year. So this isn't necessarily a rental. I would go maybe like a 3rd rounder or maybe a 4th rounder, throw in Tariq Young maybe as a receiver that you could send along, even though I like Tariq Young, which I think could be why I'd be okay trading him, just because I think there is value there. But yeah, like a mid-rounder plus a Tariq Young might be a ballpark number for me.
Yeah, like for me, I wouldn't go any more than a third just because of the concussion history. That worries me. And I just don't know that it's that big of a need for this team with the type of offense that they're running. Next one here coming from our listeners, going down to South Florida, another player, very similar situation, Jalen Phillips, edge rusher for the Miami Dolphins. When he has been healthy, Nick, has been a fantastic player, but he has had a couple of severe injuries the last couple of years. He's missed a lot of games. That is another player. Like me personally, I'd tell Miami, like, look, if you guys have concerns about extending this guy because of an injury history, I've got concerns of giving you more than a fourth and a later round pick. I'm not going into day 2 picks for a guy who has had the injury issues he's had. And quite frankly, only has 1 sack this year. He's not been overly productive. I do think putting him on Seattle's defensive line would help a lot. But I'm not going more than a fourth. That's the highest pick I would give up for Jalen Phillips at this point. You don't have the club control that you have with some of these guys. Let's stay at the edge position, Nick. Another player who did have his 5th-year option picked up. However, he's playing for a team that's 2-4 and also just drafted Abdul Carter in the top 5 to go with Brian Burns. That is Kayvon Thibodeau of the New York Giants.
And this is a guy we certainly talked about at the beginning of the year when we were just kind of throwing, that offseason filler content. You talk about trades and where the Seahawks could upgrade. Kayvon Thibodeau certainly came up in those, and rightfully so. He's a talented guy, but seems like with what the Giants have going for him this year, might eventually be the odd man out. And it's kind of the same situation where it's felt like he's had some really. It's like Chris Olave and him are like he's the edge version of Chris Olave, where feels like he's had all these crazy good sack years, really talented. I mean, he's really talented, but hasn't quite totally gained traction after being an absolute stud in Oregon. I know he had that breakout year, was that in 2023, where he had 11.5 sacks. And so you'd like to see that in there, and they picked up his 5th option, I believe. And so for that, kind of a similar package, maybe a 4th rounder. I was even thinking, or a 3rd, 4th rounder, maybe even thinking of throwing in a guy like Mike Morris, to sweeten the deal. I know the Giants are always looking at keeping their defensive line talented and influx with talent. So a guy like Thibodeau, again, not a rental if we have that 5th-year option. So, maybe putting him in the fold for season and a half, I guess, with the guys they already have. I think that would be a great addition to the pass rush. So I know everyone wants Trey Hendrickson. I know that's the kind of the big fish, but a nice consolation prize could be Kayvon Thibodeau.
Meanwhile, this was one of the really interesting ones, and I apparently some of you guys have read my article in Emerald City Spectrum because I threw this name out there, but Baltimore, we know the link with Mike McDonald. Marlon Humphrey, we know the injury Seattle's had at corner. There's uncertainty about Riq Woolen this year and beyond. Is he going to be back? Look, I know he's not having a great year. That defense has struggled, but you cannot tell me that Marlon Humphrey reuniting with Mike McDonald would not immediately rekindle the play from just last year where he had 6 picks and 10 pass breakups. He's only 29. It's not like he's a 32, 33-year-old corner. I actually think that this would be a shrewd move for the Seattle Seahawks. And maybe you flip a 4th rounder and Riq Woolen over to Baltimore. And maybe you at that point say, I'm going to get my style players because Mike McDonald's not the one that drafted Riq Woolen. And Humphrey's been a Pro Bowler. He's been an All-Pro, and last year was one of his best seasons. I just think you get him a change of scenery back in a defense he's thrived in. I actually really like the idea of going after Marlon Humphrey. So like I said, I would go 4th and Riq Woolen. If we're just going draft picks, I might be willing to give up a 3rd if we're getting a 5th rounder back, something along those lines, just because he is at the end of his contract. He's affordable. You're only going to have to pay half. And I think he's a guy Seattle would definitely consider an extension with because of his links to Mike McDonald. So Humphrey is somebody that is kind of a wild card for me to watch here. All right, Nick, last one coming for you. And this is one that always gets Seahawks fans angry. Even though they want guard upgrades, they always get angry whenever the name Wyatt Teller is mentioned.
I know. I get it. I'm a guy who holds grudges in sports, just like I think I don't know how to hold a grudge. I mean, Holy War up this weekend. No, that's nothing but grudges. I get it. But do you want to have touchy-feely good feelings with all your offensive linemen, or do you want to run the football well and win football games? Because that's what's going to come down to. If the Seahawks, and which they've been able to survive most of the time with right now with a weaker interior line. But if the Seahawks falter down the stretch, it will, I think, be partially due to the, let's just say, cracks showing in the interior line, which has been a concern.
The Bradford effect.
Yeah, okay. It's Anthony Bradford. Let's call it like it is. Anthony Bradford is abysmal. He is. And they need an upgrade immediately. And so, yes. Did he do a dirty hit on Uchenna Nwosu? Yes. Is there some bad blood there? Maybe. Maybe you approve Uchenna Nwosu. Maybe that's already happened. I don't know. But do you want to win football games or not? And do you want to run the football and protect Sam Darnold or not? And Wyatt Teller. And so for me, I'm going to go. I was kind of looking, 3-time Pro Bowler, by the way. And I kind of had the Joe Tooney trade. I know he's not Joe Tooney. And I'm just saying that was kind of like that. I'm not going past that, obviously, or even matching that. He was traded early before the season started for a 4th rounder. So I'll go 5th rounder. I try to get Teller for a 5th rounder. If that's not good enough, maybe throw in a young lineman or so. I don't have a name, but here let's go 5th rounder. If that's not enough, sweeten the deal with the back of the depth chart guy.
Yeah, I think that's probably what would get him. And this last name, real quick, I'm not going to spend too much time because this feels like the pipe dream one that everybody's asking about. And that's Max Crosby with the Raiders. And I understand, look, Pete Carroll, John Schneider, like there could be something in the works there. I can't see Pete Carroll wanting to get rid of his best player in Max Crosby. But with that said, the contract extension he signed, they only have a little under $10 million in dead cap hits they would accrue the next 2 years. So it is a contract that is definitely team friendly to move. I think your starting plan would have to be 2 first-round picks minimum because he's got multiple years under contract. He's got a deal that's affordable enough, even with some of those huge cap hits. There's some maneuverability there. I think it would probably have to be 2 first-rounders and probably Boye Mafe going over there, or Derek Hall. I think you'd have to send that kind of a package and maybe another pick or 2 thrown on top. If you're willing to give that up, do I think he's worth it? Yes. Do I think the Raiders are even going to entertain it? Probably not. But it's always fun to look into a superstar potential trade there at the deadline. When we come back, we're going to shift to the upcoming game, Monday Night Football, keys to victory. How do the Seahawks beat the visiting Houston Texans? That'll be coming up next year on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and this year we're saying thank you, therapists. Life can be tough on and off the field, and behind millions of mental health journeys are therapists who showed up, listened, and helped people take a step forward. BetterHelp is shining the spotlight on those connections while also making it simple for you to find support whenever you need it. Therapy moments can be life-changing, whether it's learning to better connect with your kids, healing a relationship, or finding healthy ways to manage your stress. If you've ever thought about trying therapy, this is the perfect reminder. Help is out there for you, and the right therapist can make all the difference. This World Mental Health Day, join us in celebrating the therapists who've helped millions take a step forward. If you're ready to start your own journey, BetterHelp can help you find the right therapist. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. This episode is also brought your way by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and honestly my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's Nick Lee. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Seahawks and Texans getting ready to clash at Lumen Field under the lights. Monday Night Football. Time for our weekly keys to victory, and we're going to start on offense for the Seahawks going up against a Texans defense, Nick, that has given up barely 12 points per game in their 5 games. It's crazy to think they are 2-3. with that good of a number on defense. But they've had some really tough opponents early in the year. They've won their last 2 games, and DeMeco Ryans' defense has been absolutely balling. How does Seattle get it done against this defense?
Well, if there is a defense out there that is better than Seattle when fully healthy, it is Houston. Houston is really, really good. And I think that shouldn't mean the Seahawks go into some sort of shell. They shouldn't play it like crazy safe. In fact, like you see here, stay aggressive in passing game on first downs, which I think will help lead into number 2, which is stay ahead of the chains and convert at least 40% of your third downs. Because, Corbin, I can just about guarantee you, if the Seahawks go 1 for 12 on third downs again, they're probably going to lose. That was I want to know the winning percentage of teams that go 1 for 12 on third downs. I don't imagine it's very big. I don't imagine it's above 500. So the Seahawks doing so against the Jaguars and getting out of there with the win was big. I don't think that they should play with that again. Right now, the Seahawks are 23rd in the NFL with a 37.3% conversion rate on third down. So if they can just be a little bit better than their season average, sustain a few drives, but like you saw that first time, staying aggressive on first down, especially with even the passing game, because if the Seahawks aren't aggressive on first down and they kind of go into a shell, guess who is going to be aggressive? 2 guys named Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter.
Yeah, that's really one of the huge issues the Seahawks have to tackle this game. And look, I think this is just playing to your strengths. It's strength against strength. Seattle is second in the league, averaging 6.7 yards per first down play. Like, they have had a lot of times they're not getting to third down because they're getting explosives on first down. I think you have to continue operating that way. And that doesn't just mean play action. Of course, I love play action, but we've seen Sam Darnold do a lot of great things out of under center formations on just straight 5-step dropbacks. He's been killer on those. So I think you do stay aggressive on those early downs and you get yourself in consistently favorable second and third downs, because they had too many third downs that were lengthy against Jacksonville last week. And the run game, I don't know how much they can hang their hat on the run game being great this week or even good this week. They need it to be competent. You have to be able to run the ball enough to be able to get respect from the Texans. But this is going to be a game where being aggressive and getting those shot plays to try to open up better third down chances so they can convert a higher percentage, sustain drives, wear down this defense some, because there may be some depth concerns at a few places. And as you mentioned with those 2 edge rushers, this is a game I'm not saying you max protect, and I think you've got to find times to get your running backs leaking out to put some stress on the linebackers and make them pay if they send blitzes. The Texans are right in the middle of the pack. They will send extra pressure. They're not a team that does it in high volume, but they will send some extra pressure. Those 2 edge guys, though, there needs to be help. You need to be able to – you're not going to be able to chip on both of them every single play, but give your tackles a little bit of relief. Give them some help, whether that means keeping a tight end in some, getting Barner or Salbert or one of those guys in, running backs chipping. You got to do a little bit of mixing your looks and how you are helping, because those 2 guys are both capable of taking over games. And this is the first time the Seahawks have played a team that's got 2 guys like that off the edge. So it is going to be crucial to provide some support for them. And I think the early play calling too, being aggressive on early downs, getting some of those shots over the middle, getting the ball out quick, try to frustrate the edge guys who are not getting it to the quarterback. I think that's got to be big for this offense. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball for the Seahawks. And Houston's a really fascinating team because in their 2-game winning streak, they've put up a lot of points, but most of that was against a Ravens team that, look, we just talked about with Marlon Humphrey. He's having kind of a down year, but a lot of it is like that entire defense has just rolled over this year. They have been terrible in Baltimore, and they've been put in some bad spots with Lamar Jackson being injured and Cooper Rush trying to play quarterback. It's been a nightmare in Baltimore. I think you look at this Texans offense, this might be a game, Nick, where even though the Seahawks have been so darn good at getting pressure with their front 4 and they haven't needed to blitz, I think this is a game that Mike McDonald needs to open up his bag of tricks a little bit with some blitzes, with sim pressures, because C.J. Stroud has the 4th highest turnover-worthy play rate against blitzes this year. He, as a young quarterback, still has a tendency to make bad decisions, really bad ones sometimes, when he gets pressured. And this is still an offensive line for Houston that I don't trust to pick up and be able to communicate on stunts or on blitzes, sim pressures. I'm going a little more exotic in this game, and I think it would be a big way to get after C.J. Stroud and really let the home crowd get involved too if you can get some big plays.
Absolutely. This is not, it's been kind of a weird couple of years for Stroud ever since that he kind of had a Jaden Daniels kind of outbreak in his rookie year. Can still turn the ball over, make some head scratching plays. And with this defense, with Mike McDonald, that can happen, especially when we're looking to get a few soldiers back in the secondary, one pictured here. And what I want to do is I like those kind of stats. It's like havoc plays. It's tackles for loss, it's sacks, it's turnovers, that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to say you need 5 sacks or be crazy in the turnover margin for this, but I do think the Seahawks need to create some havoc. And for me, the number I'm going to go with is 5. So 5 combined sacks and turnovers. They don't need to have a 7-sack game against them like they did against Jacksonville to win this game. I don't think so. I do think the Jaguars' offense is better than the Texans. So I don't think they need some heroic 7-sack effort here. But five combined sacks and turnovers, so like 3 sacks, 2 turnovers, 4 sacks, 1 turnover, something like that. Enough havoc where it puts them behind schedule. They just don't have the horses right now outside of Nico Collins to make up for it. Dalton Schultz, a fine tight end. Christian Kirk, he can do some good things, but not a lot scares me about this passing game outside of Nico Collins. So that kind of leads to that third point is you got to go like full Bill Belichick, just like take Nico Collins out of it. What else you got, Houston?
Yep. I think this is a game, not just the bag of tricks with blitzes, but like I'm bracketing Nico Collins and I'm telling Houston, I'm telling CJ Stroud, if you beat us with the other receivers, good for you. But we are not letting Nico Collins, who's got 9 16-plus yard receptions in 5 games, we are not letting him win a bunch of times downfield and create chunk plays. We're not doing that. And if he's going over the middle, we're going to have somebody ready waiting there. They're going to mix in some bandit, robber coverages. I expect that the Seahawks are going to be doing that to provide some extra support for their corners against him because Devin Witherspoon being back, I like him going up against Christian Kirk. I think that's a good matchup. I think Job can handle Hutchinson. I think that if they bring Jaden Higgins or one of their rookies in, look, Reek Woolen's got the size to go up against those guys. I think the corners are there to be able to match up with this receiving core, but you cannot let Nico Collins, who is the true top 10 talent they've got in their receiving core, you can't let him get a bunch of plays over the top or create a bunch of after the catch. Bracket him, mix and match so you have a second guy there for help, and force other players to beat you. And I would be in agreement. If they are able to do that, it hamstrings what this Texans offense can do because it's not a team that runs the ball overly effectively either. So I think this is absolutely a crucial key to this game. It is one of those. I always call this the Bobby Knight strategy. What he did with Shaquille, opposite of Bobby Knight. He let Shaquille O'Neal score his points, but everybody else shut down. This is the opposite of the Bobby Knight. Hey, we're not going to let the star beat us. We're gonna shut him down, and then if the other guys make some plays, we're still confident we can win the football game doing that. When we come back, we've got our weekly picks to click and game predictions coming your way here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive, and that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on those details, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive that comes with every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? That's what you call confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Go Long. That's where Rougiet Go Long comes in. This isn't just another ED pill. It is a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications and 1 dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day and night and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence? Head to rugiet.com and use the promo code LOCKEDNFL for 15% off your order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDNFL. Make sure to use your code so they know we sent you. Welcome back to Blue Friday here on Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by Nick Lee on today's show. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Seahawks Texans coming up on Monday night. Both teams getting their second practice of the week in today. We'll have a little better idea where things stand with some of the returning injured players for the Seahawks when the injury report drops. Anyway, Nick, let's dive into our weekly picks to click for the Seattle Seahawks. And we'll start on the offensive side of the football. Who are you looking at as your pick to click for the Seahawks going against this top-ranked scoring defense for the Houston Texans?
Well, first, let me explain what's going on for me here. So let me list for you the quarterbacks that the Texans have beaten in their 2-3 record this year. Cam Ward and the very dysfunctional Tennessee Titans, with their now fired head coach, and Cooper Rush. So in the wise words of the country singer Shania Twain, that don't impress me much. And so I don't think, there he goes, I don't think that there's some unbeatable quarterback-proof defense. And I think Sam Darnold's going to have a day. And Sam Darnold is finally getting the recognition he deserves nationally. He is number one in Pro Football Focus grade, number one in big time throws, and number one in least amount of turnover worthy play rate. Do you understand how hard that combination is to be not only making all these big time throws, but also have the fewest turnover worthy plays, or at least the rate? So Sam Darnold,
that's MVP football. That
is MVP football. So I know going quarterback for picks to click is kind of cheating. So I'm going to give myself a stat to reach here. So the stat that's gaining traction with Sam Darnold, he has 4 straight 110 passer rating or better games. I think he gets to a 5th. And the Seahawks haven't had a quarterback go 5 straight 110-plus passer rating games since 2020 Russell Wilson when he was cooking. So that is the kind of company that Sam Darnold is currently putting himself in, and he deserves it. So my pick to click on offense is the quarterback, Sam Darnold.
It's a good pick. I'm going to go with the guy that just seems to show up with big plays every single week, and I like the matchup for A.J. Barner here because Houston's going to try to do the same thing with Jackson Smith and Jigba that I think Seattle's going to try to do with Nico Collins. They are going to bracket. They're going to try to find ways to take him away. And I look at the linebackers. I think Houston's got solid linebackers, but I think A.J. Barner is going to cause matchup problems for them because he's just proving to be a way better receiver than anyone could have imagined. He is a good route runner. He's got size. He creates some after the catch. But I think the red zone is where he is really a nightmare. And we know that he has scored a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. In fact, all 8 of his career touchdowns have been in the red zone. Houston, as great as their defense is, they're in the bottom 8 in red zone touchdown rate this year. So if you get inside the opposing 20, they are one of the worst teams in the league at giving up touchdowns. I think this is a game that A.J. Barner scores a touchdown and goes for 65 on 4 catches. Maybe not the biggest game, but he is going to find the end zone in a game where I think it's going to be tough to score touchdowns. So I'm going to give A.J. Barner the nod there as my pick to click. Meanwhile, on defense, picking I almost said Leonard Weaver. I wish Leonard Weaver was still playing. Leonard Williams feels like a cheat code sometimes because of what he does for the Seahawks defensive line. But you've got Byron Murphy playing the way he is. Jaron Reed's going to be good to go. You're getting the production from DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu. And I look at that interior line for Houston. They're not playing Laken Tomlinson anymore. They've got Juice Scruggs playing in there. No offense to Juice Scruggs, but good luck with Leonard Williams. I just think the interior offensive line, they've had some turnover there. This has been a line that's been as bad, if not worse, than Seattle's last few years. I think Leonard Williams just devours C.J. Stroud. I'm going 2.5 sacks and 5 quarterback hits. I think he is going to have a monster game on Monday night. And I just don't think Houston's going to have an answer because if you try to double him, Byron Murphy's going to kill you or Jaron Reed's going to kill you. So I think Leonard Williams has a massive game under the lights.
I was very tempted to go a defensive lineman as well. But I'm going to go with a guy who is beginning to emerge after a slow start, hampered by injury. Nicky Manwari was the 7th highest graded safety among all safeties in the NFL last week. And he had 5 stops by Pro Football Focus, which is defined as a tackle that constitutes a failure on the offense. Those 5 stops against the Jaguars led all defensive backs around the league in games last week. He is having a strong, second, third, or second quarter of the season. And I think he's going to do it again. The Texans have Nick Chubb, Woody Marks at running back, and we've mentioned Nico Collins. And maybe he'll be responsible for Dalton Schultz in some areas as well. I think he gets to a solid number again. Let's say 4 stops. He'll get 4 stops, which is a really solid number for a safety. I think he's coming into his own. He's finally getting healthy, finally getting comfortable, and now we are seeing why the Seahawks tripped over themselves to get to the podium to get Nicky Manwari where he was.
All right, let's get to our game predictions now. And it's interesting. I picked the Seahawks last week. You picked Jacksonville. So I now am 2 full games ahead of you in the standings. It feels like maybe a runaway is coming here now. Unfortunately, this week, not a chance for you to gain ground, but maybe we can keep tabs here. At least that's what I'm hinting at going into the show. How do you feel about this one from a Seahawks perspective?
Yeah, maybe we can go with spread now or something. I don't know. But look, 5 of the last 6 Texans games have hit the under. 2 of the last 3 Seahawks games have hit the under. I see this as a heavyweight slugfest. 2 fighters, they don't quite land the haymaker. They just, one of them wins on points after the full match, after the full rounds. And I think quarterback play is the separator here with 2 good defenses, which I do, like I said, Sam Darnold. So I think he makes enough plays. I'm not saying they're going to go nuts, but he's efficient. He's smart with the football. The Seahawks get enough going on offense. I think the defense is going to be playing well with everyone, or mostly fully healthy. A slugfest, 17-13. The Seahawks pull it out in a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I'm going kind of in the mid-ground. I have a feeling this is going to be a really low-scoring game, and then the fourth quarter, the Seahawks are going to find a way to get in the end zone a few times. I just think they're the more talented team of the 2 rosters. I think Houston's offensive line is worse than Seattle's. I think Seattle's defensive line as a whole is going to be able to take advantage of that more. Houston's defense is great. I'm not taking anything away from them. But I do wonder how the breadth of skill position talent Seattle has is going to play against that. And the fact that they get under center. The run game I don't think is going to be great, but I think it'll be effective enough. And I think Kubiak's going to have a game plan to get that done. I just think, the quarterback play right now, Sam Darnold's playing better than CJ Stroud. I think he's got more weapons. I think he's got a little better offensive line. That's the difference for me. I don't think it's a massive difference in talent, but it's enough at home. And maybe I'll regret saying that with the way Seattle has played at home, but I think they are going to answer the call tonight or on Monday night. They are going to answer it on offense just enough. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks winning this one 23-16 at a 7-point victory. You've got them up by 4. So we're both picking Seattle, but if we have to have a tiebreaker there, we can look at where the spread sits and who is closest to that. But we both got the Seahawks winning. So you can blame us if it goes south on Monday night, as we both went that direction. Anyway, as always, you can follow me at X the Blue Sky, Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to follow Nick at NickLee51. You can subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on Monday, it's a rare day of the game show coming your way. Going to dive into some fun factoids going into that contest. And, of course, there will be a post-game show after Monday Night Football, Seahawks and Texans. Hopefully, a Seahawks win. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy a stress-free Sunday before Monday night arrives. At least if you're not watching the Mariners and Blue Jays, go Hawks.